Howdy chaps, and welcome back to another episode where we're working on the EJ again. We're going to do a smidgen on Peter's guards. Yes, they are progressing. Just, they've got to fit in between everything else. The keen observers, you might have noticed there's a roof over here. Now, if you've been watching Automotive Carnage, you will understand what that roof is for. I acquired that a week and a bit ago from a lovely chap for not much at all. So that's going to go on Peter's XA that you've seen DJ pick up out of the bush. So that's a bit of fun. I might show you that in a second. I finished the engine bay of the Pantera, and we've been making progress on the EJ. I also got a gift from a loyal viewer in the form of some subframe mount rubbers, which has now made me go, well, it looks like I'm taking the subframe out of this thing. I'm not taking the wireframes off, I'm just taking the cross member out. That, and it's pretty filthy, and I have been cleaning it in between everything else, and I think the time has come to remove the cross member out because there's a lot of junk on it and it probably could do with being cleaned up. So I'll show you what I've been up to. Alrighty, so this is where I've got to with the EJ so far. I mean, obviously junk has ended up on this side, so I have to clean it off, but I know that underneath all the grey etch is actually really nice clean steel. We were just working our way through. Believe it or not, ye olde wire brush on a drill has actually been one of the most cost-effective ways of cleaning the... I mean, it's time, but cost-effective. It didn't... Those wire brush packs are like $10, and you just keep charging up your batteries every now and again. It's not too bad, and it does do a really good job. So some of the cross member is really filthy, and I want to change these rubbers because they're toasted. So today I'm going to pull these out. I'll show you how to disconnect the steering link off there, because it's not your stereotypical link. May pull the steering column. I did pull this away from the firewall. I don't really want to disconnect the brakes, but considering what I'm about to do when I take the cross member out, I will be disconnecting the brakes, so kind of a mute point now. I didn't want to take it this far apart, but part of me is like, but it needs to look good. So the problem is it needs to look good, but I also have suffering from the poor, so I need to do it on a budget. So doing it this way is budget friendly, and it's actually looking pretty good. I've got to fix this rust too, and that one, and a split down there, and a few things. So I don't know what will get done too far in this video, but I know I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to weld up a couple of holes in Peter's guards, and we'll make some good progress. I've got to pull the wheels off, disconnect the brake lines, probably take the master cylinder out of the equation, undo the 4 big bolts, drop the sway bar link, take off the outrigger at the front, the other mount on the other side of the steering, idler arm, and it should just roll out from underneath the car. This is the roof of Peter's XA. Man, it was hard hiding these. We weren't trying to hide it, but you know, we were trying to have a bit of fun with it. So this is a full roof for his car. I actually got this as a roof, and B pillars and C pillars and a parcel shelf and sill panels. I got basically the midsection of an entire car. So we're going to disconnect the B pillars and take it off through the roof and leave all the frame and there's gutters and everything connected and put it all on as one piece. Should be quite fun. But there, that's sitting here waiting for when the car rocks up. So over here, now I thought the can said satin or semi-gloss, but apparently it's coming out glossy. So that's not the finish I actually wanted for the engine bay of this thing, but it's better than what it looked like before, because it was really janky and messy. A lot of damage here, big amount of damage. I replaced half the side on that side, down through there. I've done an extensively large amount of metal work to the engine bay of this thing, but it's done. I've still got to drop the suspension in on the passenger side, or on this car it's the driver's side, either or. Yeah, I was just a bit bummed it came out glossy when it's supposed to be satin, but no big issues. And I have reprimed this guard, needs another block down, just letting the one key bit for doing a bit of paintwork is it never hurts to let the primers and everything you spray on sit for a couple of weeks in between, so you don't get a huge amount of shrink back once you've sanded it. So I like to let them get really hard before I do that. I've got to weld up these little holes and that little hole. Somebody's actually put a small section of indicator section in here. It's such an odd thing for them to rust out, but I have seen that more than once. So this is actually a bit funky through there. That light may never quite fit right, but realistically, weld that up, and then we can start the might weld up whatever somebody has just done here, and then we can just start the bodywork on that. And yeah, they're looking pretty good. Not perfect yet, but not too bad. Yeah, so that's that. Let's start stripping this thing a little bit more, even though I don't want to. I think it's going to be necessary. Well chaps, as you can see, it's the ye olde wire brush is working rather well. I've just taken a break for it because, well, usually if you're doing something that's getting a bit boring but it's not going badly, that's a good time to stop. So I've just etch primed it, and now I'm going to move on to fixing this rust, which is incredibly common. And I think I'm going to drill out the spot welds through here, and down around here, and across here, and take this front section off. It should be fairly straightforward, because I reckon there's going to be some rust just behind it as well, because, well, that's life. And this is going to be way easier to fix off the card, and then I can just put the whole panel back on. So basically you just want to get a spot weld drill bit, drill out spot welds along there, up through here to here. This panel should come off. On an EH Holden, I believe this side is actually shorter, straight through there, because on EHs I think they have the option to have a much wider radiator on automatics, and I think on the manuals this panel is just a blank, they bolt in. Other than that, I think that's one of the few differences with the EJ and EH wireframes. But this is very common. Surprising it doesn't actually have it here, but I've still got to fix this, so I might do some rust repairs now, get back into it, and we'll get this off, and I'll quickly fab up a new piece, and probably, judging by there's a hole through there, fix the piece behind it, and it will give me a chance to actually clean the engine bay panel spotlessly while it's off. Alrighty chaps, here's a fine example of why most car restorers do not quote rust repairs. That is rusted out, that is rusted out, and so is that. It started off so simple, 1 layer, 2 layer, 3 layers. And basically you're just going to keep digging all the way down to the bottom until you get to it. Now I'm going to sit there and repair that, make a new piece for there, stick that in, repair that, and put that back in. But yeah, look at it, just what seems so simple as a tiny hole there actually ate through that piece and then had eaten through the layer below it. Things we do. Oh well, I'm going to crack onto that and catch up in a second. Alrighty, that bit is now welded up, cleaned up, looking lovely. Yep, all pretty, copper sprayed. I'm going to etch prime in a second. I'll just put a bit of tape across there, etch prime over there, across there. I've still got to buzz off the little bits of steel left on here, maybe belt sand that. Now I've got to make up a small section, and all it's going to have is a little channel in it. And I actually suspect that channel's purpose, and there's one on the other side, I think it's just to let stuff drain out the bottom. So on the bottom it had one and then a space and then 2 spot welds, and then yeah, so this is just designed to let junk out there, which is also a really great spot for stuff to build up and rust out. So that's done. Make a new piece. It should be fairly straightforward. Should be able to put it in the vise, open the gap to whatever that is, and then tap in, and it should make the channel. I would suggest, if you're doing this, especially when putting recesses in panels, because it's got a pull steel, in my experience I always do the lumps and bumps first, and then once they're all in and looking good, then I trim it down to the size it needs to be, because every time you put a ridge in something, it's going to pull steel, and it'll technically make your piece get smaller. So if you had it cut to the right size and then you went to put a ridge down the middle of it, the panel's actually going to pull in slightly. So you do your ridges first, then you trim your outside. That's just my experience. If you've experienced different, then you have fun with that, but that's just my experience. So I'm just going to whittle this up. Should be fairly straightforward. Weld that in, then we can go back to the original piece, which sits on the outside. And actually, once these front pieces come off, these are actually quite flimsy. Anyway, moving right along. Alrighty, that bit's now done, looking lovely. That's all prepped. All I gotta do now is fix the other piece and slap it back in. And I reckon right now, while I've got something paint stripping, I'm going to quickly weld up the couple of baby holes in Peter's guards, and then I'm going to pressure clean the piece that I just, well, basically the other half of the rad support. Pressure clean that, all the tar off it, because this car actually, slight side topic, this car has had its like tar coating, but then it's had like another one, and it's the thickest, disgusting stuff you ever think of, but when it flakes off, the stuff underneath it is like new. I can find the top piece. If I go over here, right, here's not top piece, it's one of the engine bay panels. This is what I'm talking about. Like, I got a heat gun and just melted this stuff off, and the paint underneath it, the whole car, when you flake this junk off, is like new. So that's the basic colour I'm going to go with for my engine bay. I think that's black, but I'm pretty sure it's like a blue, but that's what I'm going to go with. That's one of the I guess engine bay splash tray thingamabobs, doodah hoo-has with the Watsits. And they mount sort of here and here, here and here. So yeah. And for the tools I'm just using a wire brush, belt sander, a right angle die grinder with a roll-lock disc, and a strip disc air saw, and another die grinder with a cut-off wheel on it. But yeah, that turned out pretty good. I left the top half because, well, I didn't need to remove it, and it allowed me to just have to make just a little bridge, and then it joined in quite nicely with the original piece, and you almost can't tell. The worst thing is all this effort to make it all pretty when you won't even see it. So it's going to be like buried eventually down in something like that. You just won't see it, but I'll know it's there, and you know, it's my car, so I might as well fix it. It's one of those things. This This is why rust repairs and car restorations are so horrendously expensive, because it's just time. So once that's fixed though, that whole side of that Y-frame will be done. Then I'll probably take this one off to fix that, because there's another plate underneath there, and I'll probably want to weld this and clean it a bit better in there, so I'll just take this one off as well, and it'll allow me to fix that properly, and I can put it back on with no issues. Plus there's a few splits down here, so that's fun. But you know, getting back into the rust repairs, so I'll catch you up in a second. Alrighty, I'm actually losing a bit of battery on this here camera, but yeah, I reckon I've only got 15 minutes left, so let's hope I don't make it too long. But that's the next piece going in. I'm going to snip, 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 weld, 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 and yes, I have actually done Peter's guards in between this. And then I'm going to put this whole panel, copper sprayed and whatnotted, back in the car, and then we'll wrap up the video. But that's, you know, pretty basic, but it's got to have a notch in it for that bolt hole, so effectively that's going to go right there, something like that actually, probably, because that's actually where that line goes, and we cleared it for the bolt. Lovely. Not perfect, but still fairly straightforward. Fold and then use the vise, one of the edges, and tap down, turn around, tap down, tap, 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 and then Bob's your uncle. And take note of which way the pressing goes. I've done that before, where I fold it, I've gone, this is perfect, and then fold it the wrong way. Yes, anyway, I'll zap this in and catch up. Alrighty chaps, I know I cut a chunk out there, but well, battery on the camera is going flat and I wanted to get it done, but there it is. The tiny rust repair ended up being the front plate, the one behind it, and then the one in the actual Y-frames. And then of course removing the actual whole piece counts as a repair as well. So there's 4 repairs just doing that one tiny little spot. However, that's actually a rust repair done. Now next time I play with this car, I'll probably do this one and that split down there, and then work my way back, and then we can do the tops of the A-pillars. Basically I'm going to do this car on the cheap, because I am poor. On the cheap, I'm going to do it from front to back, but I'm not going to cut any corners when it's sort of like, I'm going to do it the cheap, but I'll still do certain things properly like that. I'm not going to just patch over it or bog over it. I'm going to fix it, everything properly, but I'm still doing everything fairly cheap, and I've got to cut open that and get that broken bolt out, and then re-weld the captive nut back inside there. But we're making progress. So the cross members out, steering columns out, and yes, they do come out through the engine bay. They get installed going the opposite way as well, and obviously wire wheeling and whatnotting. So that side of the Y-frames are effectively done. Finish up this side, go across the firewall and tidy up down in those little nooks and cranny areas, and I'll probably stone guard below that firewall seam. Everything down there will be texture coat, and then everything in here will be a lovely satin, black, or a very, very dark grey blue colour. I don't know, I want to try and find the original colour, but if push comes to shove I'll just go satin black. And then I'll use the rubbers that a lovely viewer gave me, and I'll go buy the top ones, and we'll clean up this horrendous mess of a cross member, and then we'll give that a bit of a tickle. It's fascinating, they put wheel cylinders in lines but never cleaned anything, and I started cleaning it and I was like, this is going to be a painful one. So I think what I might do with this is this might go outside, and I might get an old engine degreasing spray gun with pressure and put paint stripper in it and blast this whole thing with paint stripper, and then keep pressure cleaning it until all the tar and goo and stuff turns to mush, and then just clean it up and stick it back in. We're obviously going to put probably new springs and shocks in, and tidy up all the control arms and stuff. They're all greasable, they don't seem stuffed. I meant to show how these are undone, but there's a split pin here, and you unwind this big honking sort of I say it's like a giant grommet, and the steering arm just pops out, and then they've got like a shim with a spring that go on top of them. So that's all pretty janky, and yeah, they can't go back in like that. So that'll get cleaned up and then go back in. I did actually weld up the guard holes, by the way, so that's ready to have some bodywork done. Been a very productive day. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I don't know if it's going to make sense, but it might not. But we'll catch you on the next one.